Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Wednesday, January 27th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Minnesota game is in 218 days, the game against Michigan in 304 days. This is the college football offseason, but things are actually just getting started to ramp up in the world of 7-on-7. Buckeye Scoop's Mick Walker just spent a few days in the South Florida sunshine covering a major national event called Battle Miami. Mick, first of all, let people know what 7-on-7 is and why it is such a big deal in the recruiting world.
Yeah, so a lot of people, when it comes to basketball, where they know like the AAU recruiting scene, guys go around, you pretty much are able to play basketball year round. In football, it's not necessarily there yet because the state of Ohio doesn't allow it to happen. And when it comes to most states out west, especially in the South, that's what 7-on-7 is. It gives these quarterbacks, wide receivers, DBs opportunities to play year round. Even some defensive line guys like JT Tuimoloau from Washington, he plays with a great team at FSB where G. Scott played out in Washington, and he plays some tight end and linebacker there. It just gives these guys a constant opportunity throughout the year to improve their craft. And it was especially great. We'll get into talking about Jyaire Brown a little bit. When you saw Jyaire Brown against Colerain, and Colerain is a notorious triple option team in the state of Ohio. And a lot of the teams that Jyaire plays in the GMC down in Cincinnati are ground and pound programs. Nobody got to see really Jyaire got tested against pass coverage this year. So it was great to just see him in live settings against legitimate 4- and 5-star wide receivers that we'll talk about coming up as well. So that's just really what it is. It gives these skill position guys a chance to continue to work on their craft year round. And really, it's like an AAU sort of circuit where you have teams, you guys sort of forming an all-star team from all over the country and coming and playing with each other. And I mean, there's a ton of recruiting going on. You got like 5 or 6 different recruiting analysts standing on the sideline, standing in the middle of the field. It's a big recruiting event, but it's also a big development event for these guys. And that's why it's sort of becoming a huge thing nowadays.
Now, before we go any further, I am just going to, right off the top, plug your Twitter account at Mick D. Walker. You had a ton of great content there all weekend. You saw a ton of Ohio State commits, too. Recruits, commits, guys who will just be big names to know for the future. So I'm gonna just keep this real simple on my end and get the heck out of your way. I'll just throw out a name. You can let people know what you saw from him, where he stands with Ohio State, if that's something that's applicable to him. First one, let's start with the guy you mentioned right off the top, cornerback Jyaire Brown.
Yeah, Jyaire, like I mentioned, I saw him in person. You and Mark saw him in person. I believe that was the only 2 games Buckeye Scoop saw him this past fall. But I think between those 2 games, you probably saw 1 pass attempt, and that's just how it is. So one of the crucial parts was seeing Jyaire get down there, flip his hips, just move and run. Because when we saw him this past summer at the Under Armour camp, it was not the greatest performance. And Bill talked about that a little bit yesterday or on Monday on the boards. Just wasn't a stellar performance from Jyaire. He ran a bad 40. He just didn't look natural. But seeing him go against guys like, we'll talk about Kyion Grayes, an Ohio State target later, another 5-star in 2023, and Brandon Innis, you get matched up against these guys in 7-on-7. So to see him have to run with these guys, flip his hips, and just show the technique that makes him that top 200 4-star kind of guy, that was one of the main things I wanted to see from Jyaire, because we know why the ranking was so high. We saw it sort of. We know why Ohio State regarded him so high, but this sort of validated it in my eyes. And I think when I start to write about it and explain a little bit, it'll validate it in a lot of the fans' eyes. And sort of the same goes with Jaheim Singletary, the other commit that Ohio State had in attendance. Jaheim was everything that you sort of heard about, 6'2", maybe even 6'3" if you count the hair in there. He's a huge kind of guy, plays a lot, played safety a lot because he was sort of trying to cover up some of the areas that his 7-on-7 team had some holes in when it comes to the other corners. When it came to championship Sunday and it came to games they had to win, he took it to the next level and moved over to corner and shut down a side of the field. There's different videos. I wasn't able to get much videos. I was taking a ton of pictures, bouncing around a ton of different games. But there's videos out on the internet you can find of him from this weekend, and he was in the hips of wide receivers, flipping, turning, running really well with everybody down the sideline. And I mean, at that same event, you saw Will Johnson, who was coming off an injury, and you saw Damani Jackson. And I thought really Jyaire was probably the best corner. I mean, Jaheim was the best corner in the event. I thought Damani looked great. He's a physical specimen, but I just think at times he looked like he did not want to be out there. And like I said, I'm not going to fully judge Will on this performance because he had a high ankle sprain they suffered during the season, and he wasn't really even 100% down at this event. But I thought Jyaire was the best corner there, and I could definitely see why Jaheim is a 5-star and Jyaire is a high 4-star. And those 2 guys are going to make plays on Ohio State secondary when they pair up together.
So yeah, both of those guys are 2022 Ohio State commits already. Damani Jackson, number 1 corner prospect in the nation, he just committed to USC last week. Just so if you're not familiar with those names, that's who those guys are. Another guy whose name you should know. He is not an Ohio State commit yet, but is a name you should probably keep an eye on at least. Kyion Grayes, wide receiver. You got the chance to watch him. What did you see out of him?
Yeah, so really this whole podcast is going to be a tease for the article I got, the Mick Night Off coming out Wednesday night, because I got some different recruiting stuff in there. But Keon, when it comes on the field, he's a great guy in the slot, great guy out wide. And I was talking to all the corners about it. Jyaire said he was the best guy that he went up against. When you talking about Keon, and there's film out there about it too as well. Out of his breaks, he's so electric and he creates so much distance that cornerbacks held him constantly. And it's just hard in the 7-on-7 when you only have so many refs to get this caught every time. But he still made plays, whether it was 2-point conversions, single point conversions, or touchdowns. Keon was constantly making plays. And you could really just see what made him such a highly regarded guy for Brian Hartline. It was a ton of speed, a ton of ability to separate naturally off his routes. And those are just things that you need to be good at, other than, like we've talked about with Brian Hartline. Some guys would like speed at wide receiver. Some guys want size. Brian Hartline wants guys that can separate. That's why Chris Olave are being so successful. Jackson Smith and Jigba, Garrett Wilson, those guys can separate from any DB in the country. And Kyion Grayes is much like that. And that's why he was one of, if not the best wide receivers in attendance. And we'll talk about another guy that's probably right up there later.
Well, Zion Branch was the next name that I wanted to ask you about. He was someone that you had kind of singled out as like someone who really kind of was worth keeping an eye on. He is from Bishop Gorman High School in Las Vegas. That is the same school that produced a whole, I mean, there's an all-star list from Bishop Gorman. Ohio State fans would know the name Haskell Garrett, and of course the great Tate Martell. Those are the recent Buckeyes from Bishop Gorman, but that has been a school that has just pumped out Power 5 prospects over and over and over the last few years. Sounds like Zion Branch might be the next guy out of that pipeline.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Tate, because I asked him about that when I talked to him for an interview we'll have coming out. And he mentioned, I said, have you talked to either Haskell or Tate? And he said, well, Tate comes around Las Vegas, so he's still there. So I might ask him about Ohio State, and we'll see how that review goes for Tate. That'll be an interesting conversation. But yeah, Zion Branch is a guy, because we sort of talk about a lot about corners when it comes to Jaheim, Jyaire, and then there's the Will Johnson, there's the Denver Harrises. But Ohio State obviously needs a safety. And Xavier, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, starts with an N, out of Iowa, might be their top guy at the board. But right behind him might be Zion, because Zion looks a lot like what you see out of CJ Hicks and Deshaun McCullough, but he moves so well. He's 6'2", maybe 6'3", right around 200 pounds, and he flips his hips and he runs, and he's a field general back there as a big hawking safety when it comes to just getting interceptions, pass breakups, making plays on the ball. I think he would be a great guy to sort of just pair with all these corners when it comes to just size, length, and readability. And I mean, we saw it with Josh Proctor this year. He's going to progress and grow, but part of what makes this defense, part of what can make a good defense at Ohio State with the scheme that Kerry Combs and Ryan Day want to run is a true, very good tackling, smart single high safety. And Zion Branch, despite his big frame, is a guy that could slide in there and play that just because of the athleticism he has. And even though he's sort of on the West Coast, I think a lot of people want to mention USC, since they're sort of having a recruiting boom, and a few other West schools. But I think when it comes to USC, maybe Oregon, and then Ohio State, those three schools are right up there for Zion. And I think he's legitimately considering going out to Columbus and at least taking a visit, if not eventually landing in Columbus and signing with the Buckeyes. So I think he's just a name that we probably should talk more about, and I will talk more about in my upcoming Mick at Night.
Now, you talked also, in addition to the 7-on-7 stuff, you also covered a SECSensei workout. What is a SECSensei workout? And it sounds like from what you had on Twitter, it's just you saw a couple pretty big-time prospects there, Kenyatta Jackson and Shamar Stewart. Let us know a little bit about them.
Yeah, so SECSensei is my guy, Javon Gopi. He's his name. He's just a South Florida-based defensive line trainer, and he's sent a ton of different guys to. Nick Bonito is one of his bigger college names. He plays at Oklahoma. Charles Turner, who he sent from St. Thomas Aquinas to Alabama this past year. And then you go down the list, he had multiple other guys that I can't even remember off the top of my head. But his next two up will be these two guys, and that's Kenyatta Jackson at Chaminade Hollywood High School. And I believe it's in Miami or Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And then Shamar Stewart out of Morningstar Pace, who's another, both top 100 type of guys at defensive end positions. And they both fit the size profile. I'll have more pictures up on them Wednesday when this episode comes out on my Twitter account. So you can go ahead and just sort of size them up there. But they're both 6'4", 6'5" guys with a lot of length and a lot of bend. Kenyatta specifically, since Shamar didn't get to work out, he sort of just showed up to do an interview with me. But Kenyatta, his told me before the interview that he's like a Gumby when it comes to this bend around the edge, and he can bend, get to the quarterback with ease, and you could see that in all the different workouts you put him through. I think great on this team, and just he fits the mold of what Larry Johnson looks in a defensive end, and he's just, when it comes to his recruitment, it's going to come down to really Ohio State and Clemson, because I think he's a guy that sort of wants to get out of Florida and explore opportunities, and I think that puts Ohio State right up there, especially with their defensive line program and history when it comes with Larry Johnson.
And you had two more guys that you had designated as remember the name. These are 2023 guys, so you have a little bit of time to think about them and remember them before they are doing anything for real. But wide receiver Brandon Innis and cornerback Cole Martin. What can you tell us about those guys?
We'll start with Cole Martin, because he's a guy out of Arizona that there's two high schools predominantly in Arizona. They actually played for the highest classification of Arizona state championships, and that's Chandler, where Kyion Grayes goes to, and Hamilton, which is also in Chandler. They're crosstown rivals, and that's the team that Kyion Grayes' team beat in the state championship. It has a ton of different 4-star and 5-star talents on it, but Cole Martin he's going to be the top guy in Arizona for 2023, and he's a guy I think Ohio State fans and even the Ohio State program would love to have at that sort of nickel spot, like we saw from Marcos Williamson. He's a super intelligent guy. When I talked to Keon about playing him, he said that he's so amazing because of his film study. He sits down, he'll know exactly what Keon wants to do throughout the game, know exactly what their offense wants to do. And he played corner, he played safety, he played a little bit of everything for this Tucson Church defense, and was making plays consistently, covered up a lot of the areas where they had deficiencies when it comes to just talent-wise compared to the other teams in the tournament. Cole is a guy that I think Ohio State's will love to know. If Ohio State's going to continue to raid the state of Arizona, he's going to be the next up guy in 2023. Innis, this is a guy that you should know not only for Ohio State reasons, but you'll see him make plays on Sundays. And I thought this was a lot of hype going into the event, but it's truthfully, and I think you would have seen it if you guys got to see him at your South Florida Express workout when you're down in Miami. This guy, he's been playing 7-on-7 since he was 8th grade, and he's been making plays on the high school level since he was in 8th grade. I don't know his exact size off the top of my head, but this dude can separate, find holes in coverage, and catch balls against anybody. Whether that was Jyaire Brown, whether that was Kamari Rogers, who was a former LSU commit and the top guy in Mississippi, who plays for the Bootleggers team. Cole Martin, he made catches on. You point out a cornerback that was there, or any sort of DB, and Brandon Innis just made plays. He was, like I said, between him and Keon, they were probably two of the best wide receivers. And I haven't seen everybody in 2023, obviously. I mainly focused on Ohio, but when it comes to nationally, if Brandon Innis made a push to be the #1 overall prospect when it comes to when this class is finished, I would not be surprised. He's just that talented. And one thing that separates him truly is I saw it after the game, and another reporter I was talking to pointed out, South Florida Express lost for the first time ever to Bootleggers, which is the team that has Jyaire Brown on it. And Brandon Innis, it was in a good way, was throwing a fit because he did not want to lose that game, and he was just upset about losing. This guy that hates losing, he's constantly working to improve, and this is a guy we'll know lots more about because obviously Bill has a ton of connections to the South Florida Express team. But truly remember this name. He's going to be the best wide receiver in 2023 class, and a guy that will play on Sundays, very high on the teams such as Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State, all the teams that make the playoff consistently. Those will probably end up being his top 3 schools, and he's loving everything from them. If Brian Hartline keeps this lineage up of recruiting top wide receivers, we will talk far more about Brandon Innis.
But we're going to be talking a whole bunch about a whole lot of different stuff. This is, as we mentioned, it's the off season. Technically, there is no off season at BuckeyeScoop.com. Mick, let people know. You mentioned you've got a Mick at Night podcast coming up pretty soon. Basketball season also going on, so you got anything but football podcast. Let people know about where else they can find you and your work.
Yeah, so obviously you can find all my work over at BuckeyeScoop.com. Like I said, I'll have a Mick at Night the evening this comes out. I still have some interviews from Dante Moore, who's a 2023 highest 4-star quarterback out of Detroit, Michigan. I have some interviews. I'll probably come out the day this podcast comes out on Wednesday because I want to get those out from when I saw him last week. And then the rest of the week, it'll be, I believe I have probably close to 8 interviews with prospects from my trip from Florida that I'll get all of those out. And then I might have a 2-part Mick a Night. I might do 2 nights of it just because there was so much recruiting information. I mean, we've got different guys telling me, high 4, 5-star guys that if Ohio State was to offer, that would change their recruitment. And we'll mention all of that in the Mick a Night. Like you said, we'll also have anything but football coming out with me and Matt Goldman. that's going to be awesome too, because Ohio State just got a huge win over Wisconsin. Has been on a tear recently when it comes to top 25 top 25 games. And I was sort of talking to this about somebody earlier, but it's hard to go down to these sort of events and say you're covering Ohio State, because then you got everybody coming up and going, oh, this is my top guy on my team and he wants to be recruited by Ohio State. That's just, and I was talking about that when I was up in the Michigan area, when I was talking to the Michigan reporters. A lot of people would envy us in our position, Tom, covering a team like Ohio State, and it's only going to get better, whether it's the transfer portal or recruiting. It's a great time to be a Buckeye, great time to be a Buckeye Scoop, and hopefully you guys can keep checking our stuff out.
What a sales pitch. Nicely done, Mick. Very nice job. I mean, you mentioned the transfer portal. Man, these scoops have been flying at BuckeyeScoop.com this week. Alex Gleitman had a big one on Monday night. Bill Green had a follow-up on that same one on Tuesday. Lots of new information about a potential top cornerback target who could be coming to Ohio State potentially in the transfer portal, a story we are watching very, very closely for obvious reasons. And also, boy, lots and lots of recruiting. National Signing Day, 1 week from today. 1 week from today, Ohio State has a couple very, very highly ranked prospects who we talked about on Monday's show, who are still out there and making their decisions. That is something else you're going to want to keep an eye on. And there's no better place to keep an eye on all of this than at BuckeyeScoop.com. Consider becoming a member today. Also, make sure you check out all of our podcasts, including Mick's two fine podcasts, Mick at Night and Anything But Football. Just search Buckeye Scoop wherever you get your podcasts, and you will find those, as well as all of our other great shows. Tony Gerderman and I just released a new episode of Buckeye Weekly yesterday, looking at the early enrollee freshmen, and Tony set some over-unders for me on what we're expecting from these guys this year, who might be the first one who starts, how many times will certain guys be all conference, all that kind of stuff. So good insight into what we're expecting from the guys who are just showing up on campus now. So you can find all of that on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, all of those places. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find all of those. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.